Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national broadcaster Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations and regional and global developments that have a bearing on India's rise. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking a close look at the phenomenon of the global threat posed by the authoritarian state of China. What are the ramifications and the manifestations of the China threat to different parts of the world, Western world, Asia and beyond, and what can be done to push back against this threat that continues to grow and become a menace. This is the theme, and to discuss this, I have a domain expert joining me all the way from Warsaw, Poland. Let me introduce you to her. She is a well-known international law scholar and a fellow at the Marine Corps University in the United States. But joining us from Poland, let me welcome Professor Joanna Siekiera.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Dzień dobry from Poland. I am really honored to be here with you.
Thank you, Dr. Siekiera. It's so good to have you here. To begin with, I'd like you to start with the big picture, which is China under Xi Jinping. It's now 12 years since he has taken the top seat there at the helm of the Communist Party, and so much has changed. China has changed. There was a time when the world used to look at China as an emerging power and maybe even a benign or somewhat likable or a respectable power, a country that will be able to bring in more balance in the world. That was how it was seen at the time. But now 12 years down the line, there is so much fear and loathing about China that has spread around the world. Many are wary of China and what it's up to, and the model of authoritarian rule that we have seen under Xi Jinping has become so tight and so controlled that there is also a lot of fear about that model becoming mainstreamed in the world now. So can I request your opening thoughts on China as you see it today as opposed to what it used to be, and what do you think is the factor that has led to this more menacing side of China to emerge on the world stage?
Thank you very much for this question. Ladies and gentlemen, I am an international lawyer and I focus my research on legal culture. What is legal culture? Is basically how each society, each nation perceives the law. Why do they understand the law? Why they follow certain rules? Why a certain society codify, penalize some sets of values? And therefore, to understand China as our opponent to our values in the West, it's important to understand their mindset. What is the rationale? What is driving them to do so? Why they breach international law and order? And here I not only mean the visible examples like in South China Sea against the Philippines, expansions toward Taiwan, or border conflicts with your country, India. I also mean malicious tactics, bribing, corrupting politicians all over the world, winning financial investments, Africa, South America, Oceania. This is very important to know that the Chinese government is pursuing communism. Communism as a very deadly system, political system, which I don't want to be spread all around the world. Me being Polish from Central Europe, we had communism by Soviet Union. We know what is communism, and we don't want communism to us or anyone on this planet. Therefore, this is very important. When we talk about China, we not only focus on military conflict or high-tech competition, but we talk about the values of the future, where our children, future generations will wake up. In which world? Free world or communist world?
Absolutely. And Dr. Siekiera, so you have laid out the the two contrasting worldviews, but then when you look at the Western societies and governments, there is a lot of confusion, isn't it? I mean, you are very crystal clear, but not everybody is like you, and many of them are ambiguous. They say, well, for example, the European Union and all the leading countries in Europe, they often say that China is a systemic rival, but it is also a partner. It looks like a contradiction, but there are a lot of huge business interests. There's China, unlike the Soviet Union, is a state-driven capitalist model. So they have been able to weaponize the interdependence with the Western countries. So in that sense, there's a lot of stakeholders within Europe and North America whose business model thrives on maintaining this quote-unquote partnership with China. So
yes.
In that sense, it's a lot more confused, isn't it? This so-called new Cold War compared to the original Cold War of the post-1947 period. China has more strengths because it's been able to penetrate the Western societies and create a lot of allies within the Western societies. And I know you're a strong advocate for pushing back at this, but please tell our audiences how China seeps into the Western societies, how China has infiltrated the Western societies. You study lawfare and you study the three warfares of concept doctrine of China, which
Indeed.
includes molding public opinion, psychological warfare, and also using legal tools. So this kind of opponent is different, isn't it? And therefore makes it more difficult.
Very much, exactly, because our nations, our governments, our Ministry of Defense, they all are focusing on military defense, on security in a sense of national security. But again, my job is to talk about human security, how we as citizens of different various countries, nations, should enjoy full scale of human rights and freedoms of citizens. And this is anyhow the case for the Chinese Communist Party. They use individuals for their own benefit, and therefore after every yuan or every dollar comes appropriate values, either of communist world or free world. And you mentioned Europe. Exactly. When you look at my continent, old continent, approach to China is slightly different, ladies and gentlemen. Even a few days ago, there was this famous visit of Chancellor Scholz, German Chancellor, to Beijing, and he brought with him representatives of the largest companies, because they are so focused on trade with China. They were their largest economy in Europe was based on cheap resources from Russia and exchange with China. In our case, Central Europeans, that was never the case. So of course they will look at China not as a, as I say, civilizational opponent, but as an economic partner. So when you again look at the map of Europe, you would see a lot of Western European harbors, ship halls, airports, but also telecommunication companies, which are owned by Chinese company. And again, those Chinese companies, this is not in our mindset that the company is private. No, in Chinese system, this is all in alignment of the mission and goals of Chinese Communist Party. Therefore, China is already in Europe. Many times I hear my colleagues saying that, oh, China is too far from Europe. It's not our problem. We have war in Ukraine. Therefore, Russia is our biggest problem. And I was like, no. We in Central Europe, we've been warning you guys, watch out for Russian imperialistic appetite. That was never fed, and it will always grow. The same with China. For Chinese, they have this mentality of supremacy. And for other continents, for other people, they will only use what is being given to them. They don't need to try hard. They can go and just buy what they want. They can invest in whatever they want. In Oceania, and that's my beloved research area in the Pacific, you can here see the map. those people are underdeveloped, poor. They don't need much. Solomon Islands, the prime minister and the government, they've been corrupted so many years that for them, like to enter China, to build military base, it's so easy. China doesn't have to conquer the world in an old way of military conventional war, which apparently the West is preparing to. They don't have to. As you mentioned, their doctrine, the conventional warfare is at the bottom of it, because they can easily interfere, spread their influence spheres through lawfare, through economic dependence, through alliance, political partnership, or help, aid programs all over the world. And unfortunately, they have mastered this.
Yes, it is indeed a complex challenge. Therefore, so viewers, Dr. Siekiera already mentioned the German Chancellor's visit to China. Let's watch a small clip where the Chinese President Xi Jinping is assuring the German Chancellor that doing business and being a partner of China is not a risk and you need not worry. So let's watch this and continue the discussion.
Cooperation between China and Germany was not a risk but a guarantee for stable ties, and it's also an opportunity for the future. That was the message from Chinese President Xi Jinping on Tuesday as he met German leader Olaf Scholz. His comments come amid complaints by the EU about Chinese goods flooding the bloc's markets. Xi said industrial and supply chains of China and Germany are deeply interconnected and their markets highly interdependent. Scholz's three-day visit to China was his first since his government launched a de-risking strategy last year to avoid relying excessively on suppliers from the country. His trip also coincided with EU concerns about the threat to European businesses from Chinese goods flooding its markets. That includes electric vehicles and other green technologies. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has complained about China's overproduction being unfairly supported by what she called massive state subsidies. But Xi warned both Germany and China should be vigilant against what he called rising protectionism. Scholz has been cautious about pushing away China. It's an important market for Germany, and he said the EU should not act out of protectionist self-interest. But Scholz said in Shanghai on Monday competition between China and Germany ought to be fair. He was joined on his trip by senior auto executives like Ola Källenius from Mercedes-Benz and BMW's Oliver Zipse. Both spoke of a willingness to keep working with China.
So viewers, we just watched the video clip of the German Chancellor in China and the length to which the Chinese are going to give assurances that don't worry, everything is fine and we have a mutual win-win partnership and we should never give that up. The Chinese keep saying that we should avoid Cold War mentality and we should all work together and there is economic interdependence. Coming back to Dr. Siekiera. Dr. Siekiera, so the Europeans are confused. They say we will challenge the Chinese, but on other fronts, they also say there's so much benefit to be made, so much profit to be made from China. So this game, how long is this contradiction going to continue? Because you are saying that there is a serious threat to human rights and to democratic values in Europe itself from Chinese penetration. The Chinese have tried to also divide the European Union. And even in North America, in the US and Canada, the Chinese have a lot of assets. So tell us how long you think this game can go on, this double game where on one hand, China is eroding the Western liberal order, but on the other hand, a lot of Western countries think that, it's indispensable and we have to partner with it.
Certainly, we don't have to partner. This is our choice. And this is the thing in a capitalist world that we can do choice. So many American companies, they went bankrupt because of cheap goods from China, including steel. If US wants to fight the war with China in Indo-Pacific using, of course, maritime vessels, which are built with Chinese steel. This is unacceptable, unbelievable, and this is very wrong direction because we are letting the enemy in so easily. You mentioned European Union. Imagine that European Commission is writing officially on their websites that they have been consulting China in regards to climate change. How absurd that sounds, that we put here in European Union the strictest possible measures to combat climate change, but China is the largest pollutant on the planet. Plus, China is using the card of being developing state. They don't say that they are developed. They say that they are developing, therefore they can do more because well-developed countries have already developed themselves, their economy. So all this game of absurds will end when something happens. Unfortunately, people prefer to stay naive, blind, to stay in their comfort zone, to have lower bills. For example, I think that something will happen. The war in the Pacific will happen. I predict that it's a matter of when and how, because everyone is saying, how about the Filipinos? How about Taiwan? But it can be all at once. Also, Hamas-Israel conflict is backed up with Iran, who is backed up with China, Chinese weapons, Chinese money, Chinese providing, transporting weaponry from North Korea. So we must look at the broad picture that there is, again, as you said, new Cold War, the good ones. So us, Western world, build on principles as democracy, the rule of law, protection of human rights, and totalitarian regimes who don't care about those values, and they will strike those values because they know that that will hurt us the most.
Yeah, so China striking, you are saying, is a matter of time, not a question of if but, or whether, but of when. And yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Siekiera, on this point. But apart from the military, like you mentioned, there are a lot of these non-kinetic means they have to wage warfare as per their three warfares doctrine. And one of the means by one of the manifestations of that is what we are seeing with the dispute with India that's continuing to grow with them since last 3 to 4 years. And there they have this notion that they can also use cartographic aggression and change names of places which are a part of the sovereign territory of India. And then they also try to establish a new fait accompli for the international discourse, and they believe that that way they can have an upper hand in negotiations with India by showing these falsified maps where large portions of Indian territory are being claimed to be part of China since time immemorial. So they have this habit of encroaching and doing a salami slicing and then claiming that what is the problem, this was always Chinese territory. On this, I have an interesting video, viewers, of the recent tit for tat exchange between China and India, also involving the US, about the status of Arunachal Pradesh. Let's just watch this video and continue the discussion.
中方对此表示强烈不满和坚决反对。中印的边界从未划定，藏南地区历来是中国领土，这一基本事实不容否定。中印的边境问题是中印两国之间的事，与美方无关。众所周知，美方一贯不择手段地挑动、利用他国的争端，以服务其地缘政治私利。
So viewers, you just saw the US also getting into the act and saying they support India's sovereign, legitimate territorial control over Arunachal Pradesh, and that China has no business to interfere in it, but the Chinese will continue to do it because that is this expansionist ideology we are talking about with Professor Joanna Siekiera. So coming back to you, Professor Siekiera, you are an expert on the Indo-Pacific as well, and here you find a familiar pattern. They use military means, but they also use lawfare. And you are an expert on lawfare. They keep on raising more and more claims. They keep on saying this is our core interest, this is our core interest, and they keep on expanding their geographical definition of core interest. And then they say settle people in occupied territories or in disputed areas. They build artificial islands, and then they say this is Chinese occupied, this always belong to China. So this tactic or this strategy, please explain to the viewers how China uses lawfare as a weapon. And I know you're an expert on this matter. Our audiences will benefit from understanding the Chinese geopolitical strategy using non-kinetic means.
Lawfare, so legal warfare, using law, international law, for their own benefits, military, political, economic, to take advantage. And again, for some actions, we might not be convinced. You, India, you would be like, well, you can draw what kind of map you want. We will not accept that, nor the civilized world. And you are right. But it does work on the allies of China. This is the same what Russia is doing. We underestimate the enemy. We laugh at them. We don't follow. But who does follow? Countries in Middle East, countries in Asia, countries in Africa, South America, and Oceania. So poor countries, so-called Global East, they all know this story. They look at Moscow, they look at Beijing. So legal tactics, it's cheap, it's fast, it's effective. Yes, we might say, well, okay, but it doesn't change anything. For now, it does not. But for the longer run, it does. And we all know that China is the longest existing civilization on our planet. They strategize for decades, not like us, the Western world.
So, Dr. Siekiera, you have taught in India as well to our armed forces. Now, I'd like you to please reflect on the centrality of India to push back, because we have already spoken about the responsibility on the part of the West to realize the nature of the beast and to push back. But India is pushing back. India is a democratic country in the heart of Asia, right next to China, and we are not willing to accept the Chinese hegemony. And I think it is quite clear that in the whole of Asia, for Xi Jinping to establish his so-called Sinocentric order, or Chinese dream of national rejuvenation, India is the biggest obstacle. So from the Western point of view, how important is India, and how important is it to strengthen India? Because unless India is strengthened, we have lost the world to this Sinocentric order, isn't it?
Thank you. And again, big bravo to India, what you are doing, what you are pushing for, what you are ready to accomplish. Your navy is the second largest in Asia. So who other than you can combat the threat coming from China? By so many Western analysts, India is being called a balancer. So balance between China and the West. I personally disagree, because last year, for the first time, or was it already 2 years ago, your population outgrew a Chinese population, which was unexpected. Everyone was surprised. So not only you have bigger number of population, but you have highly educated population. You have people who are skilled, who are hardworking, also including Poland. I see many Indian people, students, physical workers, but also engineers, doctors. So this is your time, this is your era. Also for this reason, I write my books about Indo-Pacific, not about Pacific or Southeast Asia and Pacific. This is Indo-Pacific because India is central in this thinking, in which way the future global affairs will go. So your role is important, is very vital for democracy, for regulated international relations, for freedom of navigation, because again, maritime security is so important. Dare I say, it's all up to maritime security, and the future war in Indo-Pacific again will happen on the sea.
And the rule of law itself depends on very much on a strategic partnership and cooperation between like-minded countries, India as well as fellow Asian countries and Western countries. Viewers, I want to thank Professor Joanna Siekiera for sharing so many valuable insights with us. We do need to understand the Western point of view and the evolving Western point of view about China, and I hope you have been able to get that through this discussion. Thank you, Professor Siekiera. Thank you for joining us. I'm out of time, but much appreciated.
Thank you. Namaste.
So viewers, the West and China have had a honeymoon. It has gone sour, and now they are talking about de-risking, if not decoupling, and they're also talking about a systemic rivalry. But at the same time, there are a lot of Western stakeholders who still want to continue to be part of the China dream. But then the China dream is likely to ultimately devour the West, devour Asia, and devour all decent democratic societies that stand in the way. So it's a wake-up call. We need to take the China threat more seriously in all its dimensions, not only the military, but in the non-kinetic dimensions, especially the three warfares. Let's keep an eye on the China threat in all its different avatars, and let's not neglect one or the other, because then we are going to pay a very heavy price. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.